my dad grew up in Sweden and came to the United States when he was 19 or 20 years old. And my mother grew up in Minneapolis, and I had a older sister, Hazel, and a younger brother, Richie, made up our family. My mother was a typical housewife in those days. Very few women were working. My dad initially worked as a conductor on a streetcar in Minneapolis, and subsequently went to work for a railroad company as a carpenter to work on bridges and things like that. And after high school, I wasn't in a position, my family wasn't in a position to make it possible for me to go to college at the University of Minnesota at that time. So I did go to a business college and took up various business courses, bookkeeping, accounting, and things like that. I recall that we could afford that. The tuition was like $100 at the time, but that was about all that my family could take care of at that particular point. And I spent most of the time growing up while I was attending high school, playing a little basketball in the neighborhood and a little touch football and a lot of skating. My strong suit was hockey. I played a lot of hockey. When I went to high school, they didn't have hockey in the program at that particular time, but they had it in a place called Logan Park, where you could go and play basketball and football and various other things. And after business college, I took a job with the banking system, and started out initially by attending a short course that they had to bring you up to date on banking facilities and things like that, and ended up the first bank that I attended. This was part of a group banking system. They had banks all over the 9th Federal Reserve District. But I started out in the bank at Fairmont, Minnesota, and I was there just a very, very short time, and then I was transferred to North Dakota to in Cavalier, North Dakota, and worked in the bank there. And that's where I met Evelyn. She worked in the county courthouse at the time, and that's where I met her. And I stayed in the bank from 1938 to 1940 in Cavalier, and then I was transferred down to our bank in Grand Forks, and I stayed there a relatively short period of time because that was the time of the military when they were asking, or not asking, but telling everyone, every man is over 18 or 19 to register to be taken into the armed services. And I left the bank in Grand Forks in February of 1941 and joined the Army at that particular time in February, and spent a year or two initially, and was went into the bank, and they also had a bank at the time in Wyoming, and I spent a little time in Fort Warren, Wyoming, after I finished my initial workshop with the Army. I went to Fort Warren, Wyoming. I stayed there for just a little under a year. Started out as a private. At that time, a private got $21 a month. And if you didn't goof off too much after 30 days, you got promoted to private, and subsequently to private first class, and then to corporal, and then to a sergeant, which I ended up with that rank in Fort Warren. And then my unit was transferred to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. But the fort wasn't completed 100% at that time, so we had to stop off for a couple months at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. And we were there for just a couple of months until they finished the Army post, and we were the first unit, 97th, or was the 6th Infantry Division at that time. We were the first unit to go into Fort Warren, or not Fort Warren, Camp Swift, Missouri. And I was a sergeant at that particular time, and decided I wanted to go and get my commission, and so applied to go to the Army Infantry School at Fort Benning, Georgia. And we took a 90-day course. We were known as 90-day wonders at that particular time. And they had a little school, Army type school, where a lot about handling different weapons and various other things that you usually did in the Army. And they also had a period there where they rated all of the people that were assigned to each particular unit. There were about 90 men in my unit there that were rated every two or three weeks. And at the end of 90 days, I was still around. We had a fallout where some of the people that were there weren't rated high enough, so they reassigned them back to their Army unit. And I knew that I was going to make the course when they came out and told us where we were going to go to get our initial uniforms. So I figured I was going to make it. And at that time, Evelyn was still working up in North Dakota, and we'd gotten married, incidentally, in December of 1940. But she came down then when I got my commission as a second lieutenant, and we spent about almost a year at that particular camp, and we lived in a town of about 4 or 5 off the course. We lived in a town, or Evelyn did, a place called Elgin, and that's where our oldest daughter was born, in Elgin. They called it Elgin, not Elgin. And then subsequently we were transferred to a unit in Fort Houston, and we were there for a short period of time, and then came back to Missouri, and then I was assigned, after I got my second lieutenancy, I was assigned to the 20th Infantry Division, and spent a couple of years with them. Went to maneuvers, and went to summer maneuvers, and also to winter maneuvers down south to Louisiana and Texas and places like that. And all the time, all of the men, I was a captain at that particular time, wanted to know when we were going to be going overseas. We were at war at that particular time, and they kept on calling units into the overseas service, and we didn't get called in until first part of January in 1945.
No, I was born in Bathgate, North Dakota, up north of Grand Forks, and my mother, I was the oldest of 10 kids, so as soon as I was ready to leave, go to work, I left. Because there were just too many of us at home. And my uncle came in the wintertime, and a cousin came to stay with us, and so we had a pretty full house. I don't know, I'm not very good at this, but then I went to I started business college in Grand Forks. I went down and went to Fargo. I think it was Fargo, yeah. And went to business college. I started in November, and in April I had appendicitis attack, so I went home to have my appendix removed in Grafton, and that was the end of my education. I went to work in Cavalier, and while I was over there, I worked in the courthouse for the agricultural, I can't think of the letters now, where my cousin was working. And so I wasn't home very long after I got old enough to leave. But that's about all there is for me to tell about Bathgate.
What was it like growing up? What kind of house did you have? How many kids were in each bedroom?
Yeah, we had four bedroom house. The 4 boys all had one room, and the 4 girls had one room. And my mother and dad always had the baby in their room, bedroom. It was pretty crowded. Isabel and I slept together, and Ruth and Donnie Mae slept together. And I just don't know. I look back now and I wonder how we lived like we did. We didn't have a bathroom. We didn't have closets in our bedrooms. just hung what few clothes we had. And I left with one suitcase. I can't even remember now what clothes I had. It's so far back. But we enjoyed it. We all got along. Nobody, no squabbling or that. We didn't dare. My dad was pretty strict that way. So we all sat around the table in the dining room for our meals, and I enjoyed being home, but I always wanted to go back.
Did you have like a stove heater or?
Yeah, we had in the in the front in the living room we had this. Oh, I forget what kind of a stove it was. You just put the coal and wood in the front door of the stove, and that heated the house. The pipe went up the stairs, and that was the bit of heat we had up in them. I'd come down in the morning, and there'd be ice on the basin to where we washed our face and hands. Didn't have a bathroom. It's hard to realize how we lived in those days, but we got along.
Was the house out in the country?
No, we were in Bathgate, yeah. Okay. Well, we lived out on the farm first. We lived out on a farm near my grandmother. And then when my dad decided went into combining, and he went and did combining for other people, and we moved to town, and we started school in town. So we always lived in Bathgate then. But
the school in Bathgate, did it have all grades together?
Yeah, 12. Yeah, the high school was upstairs, four classes in one room, and the grades each had their own classroom. First grade, first and second was together, third and fourth, fifth and sixth, and seventh and eighth. And in the high school, we had the freshmen. There were 8 in my class, and then Isabel was in the next class, and I had more. I forget, it was 16 or 20. And the other grades were bigger as we went down. So when I got to the 12th grade, I was a senior then, and I was a salutatorian in my class. My friend, I had a friend of mine that was a valedictorian. So.
Did most kids graduate high school?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
They did. They didn't go off to work or.
No, they graduated and then would go to work if they could, you know. Mm-hmm. But it was. We had a good school. I mean, went through what we had to do, and nowadays I don't know how they do it, but it was good going to school. We had choirs, and I had typing classes that were extra, and I took what extra classes I could. And then when I went to BJC, no, it was a class in Fargo. What do you call them? Business college, I guess. Mm-hmm. Where I took penmanship and different things. I had real good writing then, but more now I can't even write. I can't understand what I write or anything. But that's about all. There's not much else to tell about my life in Bathgate.
With business school, did you go on a scholarship or did you just sign up?
No, I had I don't know what you call it. It was a program through Montgomery Ward, and I got the scholarship through there to go to school. So I never did finish it. I don't know what was left of it or anything, but I was just glad to get a job and work, but I had high school anyway. Where a lot of people didn't even have high school education, you know. What did Lawrence Welk say he had? 8th grade or something. I don't know how he got so as far as he did.
School of Hard Knocks.
Yeah, right. So, well, I'll let Bob take over from here.
Okay.
And then we did get called to go overseas, and just for about four months while we were still at combat over there, and we ended up, we went through Germany. We were the first to chase the Germans through Germany. Our unit was the first unit in one of the larger communities there in Europe, and we were with the army then until the war ended, which was in February, and then we came back to the United States and went to assigned there were a couple of different units. We went to Atlanta, ended up at Fort Lewis, Washington, and went overseas. First of all, we went to the Philippines. We were just there for a very short time, and they changed our orders, and we went up to Japan as Army of Occupation, and spent 4 or 5 months near Tokyo, and then after that, that's where I was finally discharged from the service. Just about a month or two short of 5 years, and after that, of course, we had been married all of this time, and then I decided to take up the Army's program where you could go to the college or university of your choice, and the Army paid the freight. You're familiar with that. And so I decided I better go to college, and I did, and ended up going to the University of North Dakota, and graduated from there, and then I worked with a couple of different Army facilities, and finally was separated from the service in February, and we'd been in for almost 5 years. And in the meantime, our youngsters, our oldest daughter Becky, and then Susan, and then our son, our only son Bob, and our youngest daughter Debbie. In the meantime, are all part of the family. And after I left the university, I ended up working in Grand Forks for a very short period of time, and then I was sent down, and I had a choice of going to our bank in Valley City or in Jamestown. And after visiting with the people in both of those places, I decided the best place for us was in Valley City. So I went into the bank at Valley City, and was there for several years as assistant cashier, and subsequently as cashier of that bank, and then was transferred to our bank up in the Red River National Bank in Grand Forks, and stayed there for just just a short time before we finally were separated from the service. And as I mentioned, I went back to I'd already been to the university at that particular time. And so that's about the situation. We worked in Valley City for about 7 or 8 years. Went back to Grand Forks for a year or two as vice president, and then came back to Valley City, where I worked as vice president, subsequently as president of the bank. We went actually from Valley City. We went to Bismarck, and then that's where I finally ended up in the banking system as president of the bank, the First National Bank at that time, in Bismarck. And since then, I left after actually being in the bank outside of my service for quite a few years, and I left Bismarck. I retired from the bank. I had early retirement when I was 60 years old, and then we ended up in Grand Forks again, and then we finally we acquired a home there that we lived in for 40 years. It was built a brand new house, which at that time cost us about $17,000, and so we were there until we decided that we better come up and go to this unit here where we're living now. And so we've been here. We sold our house in Bismarck, and we've been here now since January. And that's about the end of the story, I guess, as far as I'm concerned.
When you now, wasn't there a time when you were discharged from active duty and you were in reserve status?
Yeah.
Didn't you try and it was like you and a couple friends would used to travel around and try and make meetings all over the place?
Oh yeah. Well,
try and keep your
yeah,
status.
well, what we did in the reserve, we pretty much did the same thing that you did if you were in the National Guard. In other words, we met once a week. In our case, when I was in Valley City at the time, or in Bismarck rather, we met with a unit in Fargo. So we had on Monday nights every week we had to go down there and spent an evening and came back the same night. And we did that, and just like the Guard. And we went to summer camp. I went to a lot of different places, Wyoming and Missouri, and several other units. And after 30 years, I retired from the reserve as a lieutenant colonel then at that time. And so that's the situation where we are now. After a while, our place in Bismarck, it was finally getting to the place where it was difficult for Evelyn to do all the housework that had to be done, going downstairs, down the basement, and doing the washing. It was getting tougher for her to handle that. So that's why we decided to check around, and we checked this place and liked it real well, and came here the first of the year, where we've been now ever since.
So when you moved in, off, was it 17th Street, the old 1318?
Yeah.
Now, was that like a new development when you moved out there?
Oh, pretty much, yeah. Since then, there's been, the city is pretty much, as far as building new homes now, has pretty much moved farther north. And, but at that time, when we went there, 40 years that we were there when we first started out, that was about the end of the line as far as that part of Bismarck was concerned. And now, of course, it's gone way north, so there's all kind of units. In fact, most of the activity in the city, instead of moving south, we kind of got to the point where the river came into being and you couldn't go any further. Everything's been going north as far as housing and a lot of the visiting places, and it's still moving north. So that's about what the facility is now. And we like this place real well. It costs a little money to stay here, but it's well worth it. Our initial pay includes meals, and so that helps quite a bit. Although we're in a position, like you can see, we've got a little small area here, stove and a few things so we can all grab a bite when we don't want to go down there for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
So,
right.
So that's about it. This is, like I said, this is a nice place. We've got 2 bedrooms here and a workroom, and so we're getting along pretty good. The only problem that it's not a problem really, but we had to sell our car. It's got to the point where I haven't driven the last car we bought. It was a nice Buick car that I never even got behind the wheel. Evelyn was doing all the driving in town, and we never drove very much out of town either. And so we finally decided that it was the thing to do, to sell that car. So we sold that. So now we, of course, Becky and Bob, they help us out when we want to go someplace, or they want to go and pick up some groceries for us or something like that.
Right.
Where did you leave off? Where are we going to start?
Well, what I wanted to say was some of the things that we did after we retired, the places that we've been.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that everyone says, when you retire, you start doing some traveling. Well, we've done a lot of traveling. One of the things we did in the States, we've been in every state of the Union to begin with. And then we've been to Europe a couple times. And the first time we were over there, we flew to London. We stayed in London for several days at a real nice hotel, and then we went to Amsterdam and spent several days there. And then we went up to visit one of my father's cousins in Sweden. We left from Amsterdam, and we flew by way of Oslo. And then Heinrich and Brigitte and their family they lived closer to Oslo, Norway than to Stockholm. So we flew into Oslo, and they were there with their youngsters, and they picked us up. And we spent several days with them, and
Huh?
several days with them at their place, and they also had a cabin. They called it a ski cabin, but if you saw that over here, it'd be a $200,000 house. It was a real nice place up north where they went skiing, and we went up there, and they spent Christmas up there usually. And then the other thing we mentioned is the Caribbean cruise, which is something that they tell you that you should do. Go and see these islands. Going to start out from Puerto Rico, and then, what was the name of some of those islands we did see?
The only ones I can remember were Martinique and Grenada.
Yeah, well, there were a couple others too, and then we ended up for a short time in South America, in Venezuela. We had lunch and then some cocktails at an army post there.
He remembers a lot more things that happened than I do. I can't
And,
remember them all.
And then the other thing, well, was the fact that we were going to be celebrating our 69th wedding anniversary in December. We forgot about that. And over in Europe, we went through several countries, and our favorite country was Austria over there. And then we ended up in Switzerland, and I got to play golf in Switzerland. And then we came back, flew back.
Well, we went to Heinrich and Brigitta's and to Olga, Gustav and
Hold it?
Hulda. Gustav and
Yeah,
Hulda. Boy,
yeah,
that was a hard week. They didn't speak English and we didn't speak Swedish.
yeah, Hulda and Gustav, they didn't speak any English, and we didn't speak
She
any
got so
Swedish.
excited one morning, we came down the stairs, and what was she yelling about?
Oh,
What happened?
well, it was a plane that was taken over by some outlaws in Europe, and they had flew it or damaged it or something, and she was trying to tell us that, and we couldn't hardly make it out. But one thing that was kind of funny, we saw a deck of cards on a table there, and we got them to understand that we wanted to know if they played whist, and they did. And so we couldn't speak any Swedish, they couldn't speak any English, but we played whist with them. But so those were things that I forgot to mention, and that we did go to every state in the Union, including Alaska and the Hawaiian Islands.
Yeah, I think we were about 4 out of traveling. We came back and stayed now, and just went to Arizona in the winter.
Yeah.
Now we stay home.
So you mentioned Austria was your favorite place. What did you like about it the most?
What?
You mentioned that you liked Austria. That was your favorite country.
That was a favorite place. We stayed in a little town, I can't think of the name of it, for 2 or 3 days, and
Started with V. We
Huh?
started with V, the
Yeah,
name of the
yeah,
town.
I can't remember.
Think of it.
And then we took one of their trains that ran through there and went to visit another place while we were in Austria. And I can't remember just exactly where it was either, but we stayed several days at Heinrich and Brigitta's place in Sweden, and several days with
And we can't
Hulda
remember
and
the name of
Gustav.
that anymore either. It's been so long since we've been in any of them,
Yeah.
since we were over there. And they don't correspond anymore. It's too hard to write.
well, we get a Christmas card.
Christmas card,
And,
yeah.
usually a birthday card or something.
Did
so-
you see the picture up there of the 6 grandkids from up there? The 3 of them, they each got 2 kids. I don't know who's the 3rd one. Heinrich and Brigitta each had 2, and I don't know who that other 2 are. So,
But their son, came over on an exchange deal between a college in Sweden and one in the United States.
Minnesota. It was Minnesota.
Minnesota. And their son came over and went to college, and someone from that area in Minnesota went over to Sweden, and they exchanged colleges.
I don't think he went to much college, though. He was flying to
Huh?
Denver. He was flying to Denver to snowmobile in the mountains.
Oh, yeah. Those, they always seem to have plenty of money. They could travel all these places, and those people over in Europe, you know, they take a lot more vacations than we do. You know, I don't know what they even call them, but they're all over the place. So.
Yeah, well, we had a good life. That's all we
Yeah.
can say. We got a lot of good kids, grandkids, and great grandkids, and
Can you tell us how you and Grandpa met?
you know, I don't know. Didn't you tell her anything about that?
About what?
How we met? We met at a barn dance. Well, we knew each other in Cavalier for about a year. And then we were eating at the same restaurant all the time, peanut butter and jelly and this and that, you know. And then we went to this barn dance one Saturday night. That's when we first started dating. But from then on, it wasn't, what, that was about April.
Oh, I guess so. Yeah.
In December, then we were married. So
Yeah.
we didn't date very long. But we did a lot of things. We ice skated and
You know, well, we didn't have much money then, but that was the thing. You know, skating and.
movies
Mo-
for 10 cents.
Yeah, movies, and then they had dances. And one of their
At the county.
yeah
town.
town place, and they had live orchestras at that time that came, you know, and played for some of these small towns for the dances. Cost $1 to, you know, we went to these dances. That was our recreation, you know. We just didn't have much money. You know,
But the music
we
was
did
good.
that.
Yeah, the music was good.
Yeah, that was good.
So we're
So anyway, those are things I forgot to mention to you, that we did all this traveling and all this sort of thing.
So at the barn dance, did he ask you to dance, or how did?
oh sure, we always well I went with him because he asked me to go with him. No, we danced all the dances. Like we did wherever we went. There was another couple we went with to dances. He had a car and we didn't. So we went with them a lot. So,
And then you got married in Cavalier.
no, East Grand Forks, across the river from Grand Forks. But,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Where did you get your dress from that you wore?
I ordered it from somewhere. I don't know where that one you got. I don't know where I ordered. I still ordered it. Some lady was around selling dresses, boucle, English boucle. They've got that material in the paper now, in the magazines, and it had to come just in time, and so that's what I wore. She's got my wedding dress,
She has.
but it wouldn't fit her. Pretty small.
Jeez, Grandma.
Well, it won't fit me anymore either, you know.
So when you were first married, did you buy a house or did you get an apartment?
Oh no, we had to rent rooms. We'd get a room. We were working, both working. I went to the courthouse. He went to the bank. And then they sent him to Grand Forks. And then I'd go down on weekends and then come back.
What about the cedar chest? When did Grandpa get that for you?
That was the first thing he bought when I was up in Bathgate after he left to go overseas. He sent that up. And one day these horses and dray. They call it a dray, a wagon, just a wagon with a floorboard to stand on four wheels, and the horses, two horses pulled it. Here they come down the street with this cedar chest on this on this dray, and I thought, what in the world is that coming? And they came to the house, and these boys were excited. They were calling and coming to see what that was. It was mine, so we brought it in the house, and then I gave it to an uncle to watch for me when I was traveling around with him, and so that was a. I still got it. No, I still got it. Well, Debbie's got it right now. Debbie's gonna have it.
It took me a long time to pay for that cedar chest. At the money I was making, a few dollars a month, it took me about 6 months to pay for that thing.
It's a pretty chest, so I liked it really well.
Why did you mention a story about eloping?
Oh, yeah, wasn't it like blizzarding or storming the night that you got married in East Grand Forks?
What was that?
Wasn't there a bad snowstorm the night that you got married?
Not the night we got married.
Oh, I thought that there was.
No. We went out. We went to Minneapolis, and on coming back, we had this terrible storm. But
And nobody knew you were getting married, right?
no, just my mother and dad.
Oh, okay.
So how does that story work? Do you come up with a plan
Huh?
to go out and drive out and get married, or how's that happen?
Well, he had to go to the service and get his year over with. So we decided, well, we'd get married, and I'd work in Cavalier, and I don't know. I don't remember what happened. We went anyway. My folks and Isabel went with us to get married across the river, and then we told his folks afterwards. I don't think they were very happy, but.
Well, they weren't very happy that I moved to North Dakota to begin with.
They wondered, what's he going up to that godforsaken place for?
But my mother came up to see us, my sister and
Yeah.
my brother, they came up to see us when we were up there.
See
So,
where you live.
yeah.
1,000 questions.
I look back and I wonder, what clothes did I wear? What did I have? Because I didn't have much when I left home. We didn't have money to buy many clothes. In fact, we hawked. Did you tell them about hawking your best
Oh,
your best Sunday suit? We never got it back.
oh,
It was
Oh,
a
you never got that back?
dark green dark green suit I really liked.
oh, I don't know what happened.
Somebody got it.
Yeah.
So you pawned it for some money and
Yeah,
hope to buy
that
it
was
back.
in Austin, Texas. It was a Christmas year, and I had this fur coat. He came back from Japan, and he had this fur coat for me, and I couldn't imagine why he had a fur coat. And
Well, that was my poker winnings. I won
Yeah.
a little bit of that.
and I just couldn't imagine. So then we went to a movie in Austin on Christmas, and that was about all we did.
Yeah.
It was hot.
What were your first few years of marriage like in Grand Forks?
What was what?
What were your first few years married like? What?
3 years? Well, he was in the Army 5 years.
Okay, but your first few years together, just your early years. How?
Well, we didn't have much time together when we were the first 3 years we were married. Because he was off didn't get to come home much that time.
Did Didn't you have to share an apartment with another couple and you had like some sort of clothesline up or?
Well, this was a basement of
Oh.
a house in Columbus, Georgia. He was there on his training to be a captain, wasn't it?
No, well, to be a second lieutenant.
Oh,
Just three.
anyway, there's this couple, their name was Jean Lee. Jean and what her name was, can't think of what her name was. Anyway, we had this apartment down in the basement with a sheet between the beds. And we had crackers and mustard and spaghetti to eat. Oh, I can't believe that.
Yeah, the funny thing, we lived in Valley City for, what was it, 7 or 8 years?
Yeah,
And we rented all the time until about a year before we left. Then we finally bought this house, I think for $10,500 or something like that. And then, so we didn't have a chance to live in that house for long, and we moved up to Grand Forks, and we bought a house up there. And so we had to sell that.
but there was a guy who wanted it right now for cash.
Yeah.
What was his name?
Oh, I don't.
Can't think anymore about
can't
those
think of
things.
it, yeah. But
So that was a good deal. We sold it right away. Then got the house in Grand Forks. And then it wasn't long, a couple of years, and they sent us to Valley City. I thought we were moving all the time there for a while.
So you didn't buy the same house when you went back to Valley City?
Mm-mm.
no, that was one of the oldest houses in town. It was just about a block away from the post office. I don't know when that thing was built.
Then it
but-
was torn down. Some business, a power company that was next to it or
Yeah.
something took over.
Yeah. I used to go with 4 or 5 other fellows that were retired Army people, and we used to go to the camp together in summer, for a couple of weeks. So I remember when we went to Camp Carson out of Colorado Springs at one time. It was kind of interesting. One of the young sergeants that I met there, his name was Billy Martin. Does that mean anything to you?
From the
Former
Yankee, right?
manager of the New York Yankees. Billy Martin was a sergeant there in charge of it. They had a post baseball team he put together. Well, some of those places that I spent those 2 weeks when I was in the reserve are kind of interesting. Different army camps in different parts of the country. We had one interesting session that we went to way out in the East Coast, and we went to the school to learn how to loan an Army aircraft, a C-119 aircraft, and that was kind of interesting. And they had a kind of a school there. And we went to the school, and there were regular Army people that were going at the same school, and we had a wooden mock-up that was the C-119 that we practiced on to get the tie-down devices and things like that. And then for a celebration, we actually loaded a ship and we flew over the Chesapeake Bay area. And that was it. That was our graduation ceremony. So we had a lot of interesting places that we went to.
Yeah, he after he got home from the service, he went every summer for 2 weeks. Every summer.
Yeah,
Were you involved with parades at one time?
parades.
Yeah.
Oh, well, a lot of Army parades, but I mean, Otherwise, I don't. I wasn't involved in.
So Grandma, when you had my mom, was Grandpa in the military? Was he overseas?
Yeah, we were in Texas, in Elgin, Texas.
So you were by yourself? Taking
Well, he
care
was
of
in the
baby?
service there, and
At Camp Swift.
the apartment we had, he could come home on weekends. And then one day of a parade, after the parade, he came in. I had had Becky, and nobody knew it was there. Anybody was going to be born that day, and they couldn't believe that he was coming in. They let him come in and sleep in a cart in my room.
Oh.
Hazel had a fit. She thought, whoever heard of such a thing? Somebody sleeping in
Yeah,
your
that was
room.
kind of funny. Yeah, they at that hospital there, a little hospital in that town. As I could move a cot in her, I could stay in the room with mother.
Hazel, after we came home, then I, of course, supposed to stay in bed a few days, and Hazel was in the bathroom a ways away and gagging, and she couldn't stand it. She was rinsing out some diapers. I said, well, "We didn't ask you to come, Hazel. You came on your own."
How long did she stay with you?
Oh, I don't know. I think about a week. But
So we're, oh, go ahead.
Isn't that where you got that peach dress for some sort of dance or formal
yeah,
that you borrowed some money
it
for?
was blue. It was blue.
Okay.
I had a picture of it there. I don't know who's got it, but yeah, I borrowed that from my uncle. $10 cost for that formal.
Were Susan and Bobby, were they also born while you were in the service?
No,
No,
they were born afterwards.
once in
But Susan was born in Grand Forks, and
yeah.
Bobby was born in Valley City.
Born in Valley City, yeah.
And then Deb was born in Bismarck, right?
Who?
Deb?
Jessie? Debbie.
Yeah, Debbie.
Debbie was born in, where was she born?
Was she born in Bismarck?
I think it was Valley City.
Really? Oh.
I think she must have been born in Grand Forks too. I'm pretty sure
Isn't
she
that
was.
funny?
Yeah.
Can't remember.
Well, your kids were born in lots of different cities
Yeah.
then.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Grandma, didn't you say with your wedding dress that you used your first paycheck or?
You saw what?
Well, with your wedding dress, didn't you say that you used your first paycheck or?
Yeah, whatever it was I got, yeah. My paycheck wasn't $60. $60 a month at Cavalier. I couldn't imagine I would spend that kind of money.
we weren't spending much money for entertainment. Just those dances that they had, and that was about it.
Well, Debbie was born in Grand Forks.
Yeah.
Because the doctor lived just a short ways from us. I couldn't imagine how I'd forget where she was born.
Well, and then after that, you moved to Bismarck, right? Or you were in Valley City and then you came to Bismarck?
We went back to Grand Forks, didn't we? And then to Bismarck?
Yeah, we went back to Grand Forks. That's when we came down, and while they were building our home here, and that's when we had that place out at the lake, out at the dam, Ball Hill Dam.
A long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, Grandpa, with golf, was that something you learned how to do, or that you picked up while you were in the service?
Golf?
Yeah.
No, I mean I had golf before, but Evelyn hadn't. Until she really didn't start golfing until we lived in Valley City. after I graduated from the university. And when we lived, that's when we spent that 7 or 8 years in Valley City. That's the first time she ever started golfing. And here, she won one championship there in Valley City, but then she won this championship here in Bismarck, which was a big thing out at the Apple Creek Country Club. So she took up with that golf pretty well.
Who introduced you to golf?
Huh?
Who introduced you to golf?
Who?
Who showed you how to golf?
Oh, I think I had a couple of aunts in Minneapolis. They both golfed, and I think I kind of went with them a few times, kind of caddied for them and everything, and they kind of got me started in that. So that was kind of nice to be able to play some of those card games well, like I've said. As far as cribbage, that cribbage what we had has been all over the world. I had it in the Philippines. I was just there briefly. We had it in Europe, had it in Japan. It's been all over the place.
So who's the all-time leader in cribbage? Between you and Grandma, who's the all-time leader?
Oh, I think I'm leading right now, but I've won. I think probably one year or more than she did. She beat me though. I think she's won at least once or twice during the year. We stay pretty close right now. I think I've got about a 10-game lead, and we're just, like I mentioned before, not quite 1,000 games. So.
What year did you start keeping track?
Oh, gosh, I don't know just when it was. Sometime while we were in Bismarck here.
But that's all we got to say. We got nice, good families and nice kids, and lucky we're here. Everybody says we're so lucky we've got family to come and see us. There's a lot of these people in this Edgewood don't have anybody at all. They just are by themselves all the time. So I guess we're here for the duration.
So what's the secret to being married for 69 years?
What is what?
What's the secret for having a happy marriage?
Oh, for
almost
69
70
years, I don't know. We just agree on most everything that we do, or we make sure the other one knows about it.